Some weapons weren't just forged, they were born from the soul. These were known as divine arms, and they held powers unlike anything else. One legendary noble family who once took down an evil god was famous for their combat skills and these soul-bound weapons. Every family member had an insanely strong body, insane talent, and a powerful divine arm. Bell was born into this prestigious bloodline, dreaming of one day becoming a hero and proudly wielding his own sacred weapon. But things didn't go as planned. During his oracle ceremony, the moment he was supposed to awaken his power, he realized he had none. No talent, no skill, no divine arm. He was the first failure in the family's history. Outside, his older brother Zane decked him with a punch and told him to leave. According to Zane, someone like Bell, who couldn't even summon a divine arm, had no place there. Jessica and Sarah were also present, but only Sarah showed any concern. When Sarah tried to help Bell, Jessica tripped her and stomped her foot on her back, warning her not to interfere. That this was what happened when you were weak. Seeing Sarah like that lit a fire in Bell. He tried to help her, but Zane hit him again, mocking how half-breeds stuck together. Zane and Jessica loved bullying Bell and Sarah because they were both children of a concubine, always calling them mongrels like it was a joke. Later, Bell sat with Sarah, feeling guilty. He apologized, blaming himself for being too weak to protect her. But Sarah just smiled and told him not to worry. She'd always be by his side. Bell promised that even if he didn't have a divine arm, he'd still get strong enough to protect her. She thanked him and hugged him tightly. That promise didn't last long. Just a few days later, Bell was kicked out of the household. He couldn't stop thinking about how he left Sarah with those monsters and swore he'd come back stronger, strong enough to rescue her. He knew mastering regular weapons wouldn't be enough against divine arms, but he didn't care. He was willing to do anything. He went to a weapon shop and bought one of every weapon they had, spending tons of gold. The shopkeeper was confused, thought maybe Bell was preparing for war. Fast forward 2 years, Bell was riding a horse, armed to the teeth, facing off against a group of goblins. With 2 weapons in hand and more laid on the ground beside him, he charged into battle and shredded them. While Bell fought, a man in a long coat secretly watched. Curious, he asked if Bell always lugged all those weapons around. Maybe he was chasing something beyond just divine arms. The man admitted he'd almost forgotten what his own journey was about, until he saw Bell. Using his power, the stranger unleashed a glowing blue energy and presented something to Bell. At first, Bell thought it was a sword, but when he touched it, he realized it was a scabbard. Its name? Avalon. It wasn't just any old item. Avalon was a relic used to store the divine arms of legendary heroes across generations. Right now, it contained the weapons of 5 of the greatest heroes in history. Whoever could master Avalon would become the strongest in the world. Bell took the challenge head-on. 3 years passed. Bell now stood atop a ruined building beside the same mysterious man. A massive red dragon launched a fire breath attack at him. Bell didn't flinch. He summoned Avalon and materialized a divine arm. Achilles' shield. Using absolute storm, he tanked the dragon's flames. Then he summoned another weapon, Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. With a single leap, he slammed it down on the beast, lightning bursting everywhere. The dragon was done. The man praised Bell's mastery. Even S-rank paladins would fear him now. It was time. Bell had to go see his sister. With confidence, he rode back toward the place that had banished him 5 years ago. This time, he was ready to protect her. But something was wrong. His home was wrecked. Flags he didn't recognize flying everywhere. Clear signs of civil war. Panicked, he ran through the place shouting for Sarah. Behind one gate, he found her, but she wasn't alive. Her lifeless body left Bell frozen in shock. Tears poured down his face as he broke down, screaming, asking why. Why gain all this power if he couldn't protect her? He promised he would. He promised. Suddenly, a red beam blasted him. An S-rank divine arms user had attacked. Bell could barely process what was happening when the enemy, expression cold, asked if he was really Bell, the one who was banished. Bell was stunned. How did he know who he was? The man then admitted it. He had planned for Bell to see Sarah again, because he was the one who killed her. Bell, shattered, tried to fight back, but before he could do anything, the man struck again. Bell couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even scream. All he could feel was the pain of failing her. Then, darkness. And when he opened his eyes again, he was lying in front of a priest inside the Cathedral of Corf. Confused, Bell asked how he got there. The priest told him to begin his oracle ceremony. Wait, what? Bell stared, confused. Was this the past? The priest asked him to extend both hands and visualize his divine armament. Bell was terrified. He hadn't inherited Avalon yet. What if he was banished again? But as he focused, Avalon appeared. He had it. This time, he could change everything. The priest was amazed, calling it incredibly rare. Bell asked if he was doubting his ability to fight with it, but the priest said that wasn't what he meant. Bell smiled and assured him that Avalon was the best divine armament ever. He didn't waste any time. He rushed to Sarah's room. The moment the door opened, she smiled brightly at him. To him, she looked exactly as beautiful as he remembered. She ran over, asking how the ceremony went, but Bell didn't say a word. He just pulled her into a tight hug, overwhelmed that she was alive. Sarah looked concerned and asked if something was wrong. Bell held back tears, silently blaming himself for not being able to protect her in their last life. But now, he wouldn't make the same mistake. He'd protect her, no matter what. When she said his hug was a little too tight, he apologized and let go. She brushed it off, happy he was there. Then, she noticed he was crying. Gently, she patted his head and told him everything would be all right. Zane barged in at that moment, mocking them for being so chummy. He looked at Bell and said he'd heard about the oracle ceremony, how Bell found something interesting. Bell figured the priest had already told Zane everything. Bell then revealed his divine armament, a scabbard. Zane immediately burst into laughter, saying it wasn't even a real weapon, perfect for a mongrel like Bell. He taunted Bell, asking how he planned to fight with that. Bell calmly told him to take that insult back. Zane laughed even harder, questioning Bell's nerve, but Bell repeated it, "Take it back." That's when Zane got serious. Furious that Bell dared talk back, he swung at him, but Bell punched him straight in the face, warning him never to insult Sarah again. Zane roared with rage and pulled out his divine armament, a spear called Ignite. Bell instantly recognized it. Zane was going all out. Bell told Sarah to step back, till he had this. He summoned Avalon and drew his weapon. Zane scoffed, reminding Bell that he was an E-rank paladin. Bell wasn't fazed. He knew the paladin ranks. Everyone starts at F rank when they first awaken their divine armament. Mastering mana flow gets you to E rank. From there, D rank and higher let you use mana in special attacks, and B rank unlocks unique weapon abilities. Bell thought Zane was way too proud of his E rank status. Zane, annoyed, asked why Bell was smirking. Bell said he just found Zane kinda cute. That pushed Zane over the edge. He charged, but Bell summoned the Sword of Light, Caliburn, and struck, slicing Zane's spear clean in half. Zane stumbled back, staring at his broken weapon in disbelief. That scabbard was supposed to be empty. How did Bell pull that off? Bell taunted him, asking if he wanted to beg now. Zane called it cheating, furious that Bell had a weapon while he didn't, but instead of fighting back, he turned and bolted. Bell wasn't done. He pulled out Ragnarok, a flame gun, and fired a shot at the wall beside Zane's head. Zane froze, stunned. Bell warned him. If he touched Sarah again, he'd aim for the head next time. Terrified, Zane ran away. Sarah was still in shock, and told Bell he was amazing. He asked if she was okay, and she admitted she'd been scared Zane would hurt them again. But now Bell had a divine armament too. Bell reassured her. He'd handle everything. Sarah blushed and told him he was really cool. Bell looked at her smile and thought to himself, as long as he could protect that smile, he wouldn't lose to anyone. Meanwhile, Zane had already reported the whole thing to Duke Galleon. He claimed Bell had used multiple divine armaments, and even suggested Bell might have made a pact with a demon. He wanted Bell banished again. But Galleon seemed intrigued. Instead of reacting harshly, he said he'd go see Bell himself. Zane panicked, asking where he was going, and Galleon calmly said he was going to check the truth for himself. Back in his room, Bell laid on his bed, exhausted. Sure, he'd beaten Zane, but his body was still that of a kid. He couldn't control his mana very well, and when he tried to shoot a fire bullet, it fizzled out. Right now, his power level was F rank at best. He remembered that in his past life, the Rothwars, another paladin family that hated the Pastories, were the ones who attacked them. If they were acting this early in this life, then someone must have provoked them. Bell swore to protect Sarah, no matter what, but to do that, he had to raise his standing in the household. Suddenly, Galleon entered his room. Bell froze. It had been years since they last saw each other. This man, Bell's father, had once fought alone against the evil god and the fearsome monster Tardos, cutting through to the Black Continent where monsters ruled. That's why people called him the Genesis Sword Saint. Zane followed close behind. Bell figured he had already spilled everything. Still, this might be his chance to impress his father. Bell knelt respectfully and looked at him and commented that Bell had changed. Then he said there was no need to be formal. He was his father, after all. But Bell wasn't at ease. One wrong word could change everything. Galleon asked Bell to rise and said that if Bell insisted on formality, he'd return it in kind. Suddenly, Bell felt a terrifying pressure in the air, the kind of aura only someone incredibly powerful could give off. Galleon asked about the fight with Zane. In the house, fighting between brothers was strictly forbidden. He questioned why Bell had hurt his older brother, someone he should be respecting. Zane stood behind him, grinning, thinking Bell was done for. But Bell answered calmly. Zane had bullied Sarah again. Galleon asked if Bell had really broken house rules over such a petty grudge. Bell admitted he had, and no, he didn't regret it. Galleon asked again, did he regret going against the rules? Bell straightened up. Leaving someone you care about to suffer is the real disgrace, he said. Even if it meant fighting his own brother, he would protect Sarah. That's the kind of knight he wanted to be. Galleon pulled out his sword and held it to Bell's neck. Even if your opponent is me? He asked. Bell didn't flinch. Even then, Galleon smiled. I like your resolve, he said, and let the matter drop. Zane was shocked. Galleon explained. Not only had Zane bullied his sister, he also got beat by his younger brother. That was way more embarrassing. He ordered Zane to stay out of sight for a while, Then he turned to Bell and said he respected his resolve and his courage to speak up, knowing the weight of his words. Bell apologized for being blunt but said it was the only path he could walk as someone from the catastrophe bloodline. Galleon nodded, impressed. Then show me your power. He asked Bell to summon his divine armament. Bell drew Avalon. Galleon was stunned. That was the Avalon, the legendary scabbard that once held the spirits of the world's greatest heroes. He asked if Bell really used both a sword and a gun. Bell nodded and pulled both from the scabbard. Galleon was even more shocked that Bell could summon them. Bell explained that he could use 2 at once, but there were still 3 other weapons inside. Galleon stared at him. Maybe, just maybe, Bell really could become the next hero. Though he had no interest in weaklings or kids, he had to admit, he had high hopes for Bell. As Galleon left, he told Bell to keep training hard. Bell collapsed by his bed, finally able to relax. Even with all his past life memories, he was still just a kid in this world. But he had a plan. He needed to reach D rank fast so he could handle mana properly. To do that, he'd go monster hunting in the nearby forest. That night, deep in the forest, a white wolf had already left behind a trail of dead orcs. The next morning, Bell made his way into that same forest, memories flooding back from the last time he was there. After being kicked out of the mansion in his previous life, he had trained in these woods for days, but this time, something felt off. Even after venturing deep, he didn't run into a single monster. That was suspicious. Eventually, he came across several orc corpses, already killed. Then, out of nowhere, something lunged at him. Bell barely blocked it with his sword, and finally saw the attacker, a Fenrir. That explained why no other monsters were around. He had originally planned to fight orcs to train, but now he had a way bigger problem. This was a D-rank monster. With his current mana control, Bell was barely stronger than an E-rank. He thought about retreating, but turning his back on a Fenrir was basically asking to die. The beast charged at him, insanely fast. Bell tried to shoot it with his gun, but the bullet missed. His mana was too low. It made the shots too slow. So he switched back to his sword and tried to land a clean strike, but the Fenrir easily dodged it. In his past life, he would have had no trouble with a monster like this. But now, he was just too slow. The Fenrir slashed at him, leaving a small cut. Bell tried to dodge, but it was like the creature could read his moves. He realized he had just been reincarnated. There was no way he was going to die again so soon. He lifted his shield to block, but the Fenrir was smart and came from another angle, knocking him down. Bell was out of options. His gun, sword, and shield had all failed. There was only one weapon left, the hammer. It wasn't his first choice, but he had no other options. So he summoned the Aegis, a pair of glowing purple gauntlets. He hadn't planned to use them yet, but the situation left him no choice. The Fenrir lunged again. Bell activated the gauntlets and suddenly became transparent. The creature passed right through him. Taking advantage of its confusion, Bell leapt on the Fenrir's back. Feeling kind of bad for the beast, he still swung the hammer down, once, twice, again and again, until the Fenrir stopped moving. The Aegis, also known as the Gauntlet of Darkness, didn't just boost physical strength, it grew stronger over time. Bell finally got a break and retrieved the weapon, thanking the gods he had it. Dark Divine Arms came with special powers right from the start, but unlocking their full potential was risky. It meant falling deeper into the darkness. Still, Bell had bigger questions now. There had never been a Fenrir in this forest before, not in his past life. Something was clearly different this time around. But for now, he put the mystery aside. He also realized that hunting strong monsters gave him way more experience and mana than mowing down hordes of weaker ones. So he decided to keep testing out the hammer's strength. Back at the mansion, Sarah sat peacefully under a tree, weaving a flower crown. She smiled, thinking Bell would love it. Then Jessica showed up. She laughed and asked for the crown, saying someone as messy as Sarah didn't deserve something so pretty. Jessica asked a guy nearby, Spen, what he thought. Spen backed her up. With a smirk, Spen pulled out a whip and destroyed the crown. Jessica yawned, bored. She summoned a gun and suggested they use Sarah for target practice. Just as she raised her arm to fire, Bell suddenly stepped in, blocking the shot with Avalon. He greeted her calmly, saying if she was bored, he'd be her entertainment. After all, he wanted to test out his divine armament too. Jessica snapped at him, demanding to know what a mongrel like him was doing here. Sarah ran into Bell's arms, and he told Jessica to calm down. Everything was fine now. Spen walked up, asking why Bell was glaring at Jessica like that. Bell figured he must be her personal attendant, and warned him not to disrespect a duke's son. Spen didn't care. He said a concubine's son didn't deserve respect. Jessica chimed in, surprised that Bell, normally quiet, had managed to beat Zane. That must have made him feel brave. Spen laughed, blaming Zane for being too careless. Jessica still thought Bell just got lucky. Bell smirked. Want to find out if it was luck? Angered, Jessica ordered Spen to deal with Bell. Spen lashed out with his whip, striking the ground, freezing the grass instantly. Bell realized then, Spen was a D-rank paladin, way stronger than Zane, who was only E-rank. Spen warned Bell not to run and froze his legs, then his arms and torso, locking him in place. He said he'd enjoy beating Bell slowly. Belle calmly replied that Spen talked too much, and for making Sarah cry, he'd make him pay. Spen launched his whip again, but Belle broke free, dodging with ease. Jessica was stunned. How was Belle that fast? Belle thought Spen wasn't half bad, but compared to the training he went through in his last life, this guy was nothing. Sarah watched in awe, saying Belle's movements looked like dancing. Spen taunted Belle, calling him good at dodging. Belle replied he wouldn't dodge anymore. He wanted to see if Spen could really turn him into an icicle. Spen laughed and froze Belle's hand and leg again. Sarah gasped in fear. Spen boasted that Belle was completely frozen now and had no chance. But Belle grinned and said, "You done?" He summoned Ragnarok with one free hand. Spen freaked out. No way, he had another divine armament. Belle blasted the ice apart and broke free. Jessica was horrified. How could Belle use more than one divine armament and switch their powers so easily? Belle aimed at Spen and said, "Your turn." Spen surrounded himself in ice, challenging Belle to try breaking it. Belle just said, "Sure," and fired. The bullet shattered the ice and sent Spen flying. Jessica couldn't believe it. He had taken out a D rank like it was nothing. She, as an E rank, didn't stand a chance. Belle turned toward her and said it was over. She trembled and pulled out her gun, firing off panicked shots that all missed. Then she turned and ran. Belle warned her. If she ever hurt Sarah again, she wouldn't get off so easy. Sarah ran up and hugged Belle, asking if the whip had hurt him. Belle smiled and said it didn't matter. He was just glad she was okay. Sarah said he was really strong now. Belle promised to keep getting even stronger, just for her. She showed him a second flower crown, the one she made for herself. Since the first one got destroyed, she placed this one on Belle's head and thanked him for always protecting her. Belle was touched. He promised her. One day, the entire country would respect her. But deep down, he knew they weren't safe yet. Even though he had beaten Zane and Jessica, the rest of the house still saw him as a concubine's kid. His status hadn't changed, and once they came back, they might target Sarah again. Belle needed to secure a solid place in the family to protect her. The scene shifted to Galleon, who was in the middle of sword practice. Belle approached him and asked if he could take the C-rank promotion exam. Galleon paused and asked why. Belle said he wanted to serve the king as a proper member of their house. He reminded Galleon that as part of a ducal family, they were expected to take on royal duties like guarding VIPs or hunting dangerous monsters. The quickest way for Belle to gain respect and secure a place in the house was through achievements, and that meant earning higher ranks. Galleon said he admired Belle's ambition, but it was too soon. Most people needed to become full-fledged paladins before reaching C rank. Belle had just awakened his divine armament and was technically still F rank. He suggested Belle start with the E rank test instead. Belle then pulled out a fang. Galleon's expression changed the second he saw it. It was a Fenrir fang. He asked how Belle got it. Belle explained that it wasn't easy, but he had managed to beat the beast using one of his divine armaments. Galleon was impressed. Beating a D rank monster alone, especially while still learning to use attributes, was no joke. He admitted that Belle might be ready and gave him the green light to take the C rank exam, but warned him not to disappoint. Belle nodded with determination. At the exam site, a crowd of applicants had gathered. One boy whispered that C rank was a huge hurdle. Someone else added that people died every year taking this test. Belle walked past them, catching everyone's attention. He looked like a kid, way too young to be there. He approached the receptionist and asked to register. She looked surprised. "Where are your parents?" "I'm here to take the exam," Belle replied firmly. She told him to come back when he was older. Belle stood his ground. "Stop treating me like a kid. I'm a paladin too." Just then, another boy stepped in and told Belle to leave. Belle didn't recognize him at first, but the others did. His name was Len, and he wielded the wind sword, a weapon said to deliver 8 slashes in a single swing. Len told Belle that to reach C rank he needed to be as amazing as him. He asked what divine armament Belle had. Belle showed his scabbard. Everyone burst into laughter. Len said it was pathetic and doubted Belle could even fight with that. They joked that he should just go home to his mom. But Belle ignored them and told the receptionist to sign him up. She looked skeptical but asked if he had a letter of recommendation or if he was already D rank. Belle handed her the letter. She was stunned. It was from Galleon himself. That meant Belle wasn't just any candidate. He was the Duke's son. The test began. A knight explained the rules. They'd be teleported into an underground dungeon. Their mission was to retrieve a light jewel from the 5th floor within 5 hours. Only 3 jewels existed, meaning only 3 people could pass. Everyone was shocked. Len claimed one of the jewels for himself right away. As the teleportation started, everyone was sent to different parts of the dungeon. Belle found himself alone on the 1st floor. Looking around, he thought the place was huge, but 5 hours should be plenty of time. Since there were plenty of monsters, he decided not to rush. Fighting monsters would help increase his mana, an essential part of getting stronger. Elsewhere, the other candidates were already struggling against monsters. Len, on the other hand, effortlessly sliced through one and teased the others for having a hard time. The others praised him, calling him amazing. Len soaked up the attention and told them to keep trying, though he clearly thought most of them were dead weight. Soon, the group arrived at a chamber with 3 separate entrances. Len guessed this had to be the final room. Maybe now something interesting would happen. They stepped in and found a ton of D-rank monsters waiting. At the far end of the room were 3 jewels sitting on a pedestal. Just then, a strange monster appeared. Len attacked first, trying to shred it with his wind slashes, but the monster didn't even flinch. Then, it knocked Len back with 1 hit. Len was stunned. His attacks had done nothing. Elsewhere in the room, the other 2 contestants were also getting overwhelmed. One was fighting a flying monster that kept dodging his attacks using wind, and the other struggled with a liquid creature immune to physical strikes. Len realized this was the final challenge. Each monster had been chosen specifically to counter their divine armament. As a massive monster charged at Len, Bell suddenly appeared, slamming it with his hammer and saving him at the last second. "That was close," Bell said, grinning, "but a fun hunt." Len was floored. "You again?" A jelly monster tried to strike Bell, but he blocked it easily with his sword. Then came the real shocker. Bell's weapon changed forms. Moments later, he pulled out a gun and shot down the flying monster with 1 clean hit. The girl and boy were left speechless. That scabbard? It wasn't just for show. Bell really had multiple divine armaments, and he could actually use them. He said time was running out and urged them to finish the fight. With almost no effort, Bell defeated all the remaining monsters and walked up to the pedestal. The others followed in awe. The girl complimented him, saying he was amazing. The boy was just dumbfounded and asked how many divine arms Bell actually had. Even so, Len refused to admit defeat and kept acting cold toward him. The girl snapped at Len, calling him weak, and the boy admitted he'd underestimated Bell too. They suggested teaming up with Bell so they could all grab jewels and pass. But Bell already had 1 jewel in hand. Then, without warning, he crushed the other 2 with his hammer. Everyone froze. The boy asked, "Why would you do that?" Bell looked him straight in the eye and said, "Because you don't deserve them." He called them out for trying to leech off someone else's effort instead of earning their own way. If they wanted to be knights, they should act like it. Len, despite being called weak, thanked Bell for the lesson. He said he wouldn't let things end like this. He'd get stronger. Bell was kind of surprised by Len's honesty. He said goodbye and left. When he emerged from the exam site, he was officially a C-rank paladin. His mana had grown, and now he was ready to push for real recognition within the family, and finally protect Sarah the way he always wanted to. The scene switched to Galleon's mansion, where he sat in a room with 2 other men. One of them mentioned that this had something to do with karma. The Paladin faction rumored to be plotting against the kingdom of Meldia. Galleon confirmed it. He said 3 B-rank paladins were approaching their territory, and their family had been ordered to eliminate them. One of the men noted that a squad from Shub had already fallen to these paladins. The other added that even a special unit from the elite shrew had been defeated. They discovered that the enemy was using forbidden weapons, divine armaments fueled by the pentagram grimoire. Galleon said Karma's actions couldn't be ignored any longer. They had to be wiped out completely. Then one of the men looked around and asked where Jin was. Just then, a book floated into the room and a boy entered. He said everything had already been taken care of. The enemy organization was gone, and he was the one responsible. He confidently declared that he would become the next duke. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Sarah sat in her room. A servant brought her a plain bun and some tea, but her expression made it obvious she didn't enjoy serving Sarah. After she left, Bell entered with a big box in hand, announcing he was back. Sarah lit up, overjoyed to see him. She immediately asked where he'd gone, saying she'd been worried. Bell apologized, saying he had an important job to do, but to make it up to her, he brought souvenirs. He laid out some apple pie, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. She asked if they could eat together. Bell smiled. She was just too cute. Still, he couldn't ignore the reality. Sarah's meals were plain and dull. Clearly, the servants weren't treating her properly. Bell made a mental note. He had to fix this soon. Back at Galleon's place, Jin returned. Galleon pointed out that Jin had already reached A rank and even vowed to take down Karma on his own. One of the men commented that it wasn't surprising. Jin was just in a league of his own. Jin asked if there was anything else for the day, but Galleon said no. In fact, the king had given him another task, protecting Princess Riki during her journey to a neighboring kingdom. One of the men asked if the royal guard wasn't enough. Another, named Razor, replied that Karma was a real threat now. They couldn't take any chances. They discussed the route. One man suggested taking Rakata Pass since it was the safest. Then Bell walked in and asked them to hold on. Galleon turned, noting that the exam must be over. Bell confirmed it and showed his C-rank license. The others were shocked. C-rank already? Galleon asked why Bell had interrupted. Bell said he had a better idea for the travel route. One man raised an eyebrow. "You're giving advice now?" Bell explained that Rakata Pass was actually dangerous, not because of monsters, but because of bandits. Traveling that way would add 3 extra days to the journey. Instead, he suggested the Plains of Death. The room fell silent. Everyone knew that area was filled with monsters. Bell clarified. The monsters there were mostly death chimeras and dark horrors, but they were nocturnal, meaning the area was safe to pass during the day. The whole trip would take just 1 day. One of the men was surprised at how much Bell knew about monster behavior. Galleon watched closely, thinking to himself that Bell wasn't just strong, He was smart, too. Belle then asked to take charge of escorting the princess. He wanted to guide her through the faster route himself. Then Jin, standing nearby, turned with a cold glare. "You've got some nerve," he said. Belle inwardly sighed. He forgot about Jin being there. Jin asked, "You really think you're strong enough to protect her?" Belle answered confidently. A knight stands by his word. Razor snapped, telling Belle to shut up. His words sounded like a challenge to Jin. Belle recognized Razor. He was a B-rank paladin and Jin's right-hand man. Jin calmly told Razor to test Belle. Razor summoned his divine armament and lunged at Belle, hoping to humble him. But to everyone's shock, Belle blocked the attack with his sword. Even Jin was surprised. Belle's speed wasn't normal. Galleon stepped in. That's enough. He officially gave Belle the mission. Razor couldn't believe it. "Are you serious?" Galleon said that karma wasn't a concern anymore. This was the perfect task for Belle to prove himself. Belle thanked him and promised not to disappoint. He left the room, thinking about his next destination, Shikvan Castle, the royal palace. It would be his first time there in this life, though the memories from his past life remained vivid. When Belle arrived, he was stopped at the gates. The guards doubted he could be the princess's escort. He looked too young. But when Belle showed them his C-rank badge, they backed off and let him in, still wondering if he could really protect her. He met Princess Riki soon after. She took one look at him and scoffed. "A bodyguard? You're cute, but I don't need you." Elsewhere, in a distant city, a man sat on a throne, asking whether Riki had already left for Aura. The person beside him confirmed she had, and that Belle, the Duke's son, was traveling with her. The man didn't seem worried. He's just a kid, even if he's talented. Still, don't let your guard down. Then he gave permission to eliminate her if things didn't go according to plan. The other man smiled coldly. "Leave it to me. Assassination is what I do best." Back in the royal carriage, Belle sat across from Riki as they traveled. The task was simple: escort her to Aura for an oracle ceremony. But Belle still took it seriously. He couldn't afford any mistakes. He asked why she was so against having an escort. Riki replied that she didn't like depending on others. She had her own divine armament. She wasn't weak. Belle agreed, but silently thought she was kind of arrogant. Then she looked out the window and spotted a festival. Her expression lit up with joy. Belle laughed. She looked at him. "What's so funny?" He apologized and said she reminded him of his little sister. Sarah used to get that same look whenever she saw something exciting. Riki asked if they were close. Belle nodded. "We used to play all the time, pretending to be horses, knights, stuff like that." Riki said she had a lot of siblings too, but she didn't trust any of them. Belle admitted it was the same in his family. Without a mother to protect them, he and Sarah had to endure a lot. He told Riki that he understood what she was going through, but she immediately tensed up. "Don't assume you understand me, that's disrespectful." Belle apologized and backed off. When they arrived at the destination, everything seemed normal. They'd made it in one day, just like he predicted. But hidden among the trees, assassins were waiting. As the carriage stopped, the gates opened. Knights came out to greet them. A man named Peter introduced himself and welcomed Riki. Belle felt something was off. Why were they greeting her outside the town, with that many guards? It felt like a trap. Suddenly, a knife flew through the air toward Riki. Belle jumped in front and blocked it with Avalon. More blades rained down. The royal guards realized it was an ambush. Peter drew his sword to defend Riki, promising he wouldn't let anyone harm her. Belle, watching him fight, thought Peter might be a B-rank. The attackers retreated, and Peter told his knights to chase them down while he took Riki safely inside. Belle trusted him and nodded. Peter and Riki entered the castle. Another knight there reassured Riki that she was safe now, with guards stationed all around. But then, without warning, Peter stabbed the knight and killed him. Riki gasped in horror. Peter calmly said the knight had done his duty by sacrificing himself and that his life was meaningless. Trembling, Riki tried to summon her divine armament, but her hands shook too much. She was trapped. Then, just as Peter moved in for the kill, a body crashed through the window. It was a knight, thrown aside like a rag doll. Belle stepped in behind him and said, "Sorry, I'm late." Belle stepped forward, calm and confident. He told Riki to leave everything to him now. Peter, surprised to see him alive and uninjured, gave him a smirk. "I thought the guards finished you off," he said. "I'll give you credit, but do you really think you can handle what comes next?" Belle narrowed his eyes. He remembered Peter's real identity from his past life. "Your name isn't Peter," Belle said. "It's Vow." Peter's expression hardened. Belle continued, "Your divine armament is a pair of triple thunder darts. You specialize in assassination, and your targets were Schreibe, and Mares." Peter flinched. "How do you know that?" Belle didn't answer. He just stared him down. In his past life, Belle had been the one who brought Peter down. So yeah, he knew everything about him. "I didn't expect you to go after Riki, though," Belle added. "But I don't need to explain anything. I just need to stop you." Peter grinned coldly. "You really think a C-rank like you can beat me?" Belle answered, "If it were anyone else, probably not. But you? Yeah, I've got this." Without wasting a second, Peter threw his darts. Belle dodged cleanly and braced as Peter rushed forward. He remembered Peter's fighting style clearly, diagonal slash from the right. He sidestepped it perfectly. Peter circled around to attack from behind, but Belle blocked it with his sword. Peter was stunned. "How are you keeping up with me?" I told you, Belle said. I know your every move. Peter, pissed off now, went for a combo. Diagonal slash, followed by a dart, then rapid stabs, and finally, a heavy upward strike. Belle dodged every single one. Watching from the side, Ricky was stunned. Belle didn't just block, he danced through the battle like it was easy. Meanwhile, she had just frozen up in fear earlier. He was doing what she couldn't. Then Belle landed 2 clean slashes on Peter, cutting through his momentum. Peter realized too late, Belle hadn't been bluffing. He really did know all his techniques. But Peter wasn't done. Time to pull out the real trick, he said. Belle's eyes narrowed. He knew what was coming. The tears of the Dragon King. Peter took out a vial and drank the rare elixir. In seconds, his mana multiplied. Belle knew this wasn't going to be easy anymore. You'll regret not finishing me earlier, Peter sneered. Using his darts, Peter created a cage of lightning. The air warped, and Belle felt his body lift slightly, magnetic forces pulling at him. He quickly raised his shield to block, but wind and lightning spun wildly inside the barrier. Belle screamed in pain. Peter prepared to end it, but just before he could strike, an arrow came flying in. It shattered one of the darts. Another followed. Ricky had drawn her bow and was firing at the darts. You risked your life to save me, she shouted. I'm not just going to stand here scared anymore. Peter growled and lunged toward her. Belle didn't waste the chance. He slashed Peter with his sword, stopping the attack. Ricky ran over, asking if Belle was okay. He winced. You're the one who almost got hurt. She apologized, feeling responsible for dragging him into this. Belle told her not to worry. He was happy she was safe. Ricky said she still wasn't strong like him, but promised to always support him whenever he needed it. Then, she extended her hand to shake. Belle knelt and took it, thanking her. To his surprise, she pulled off a ring from her finger and gave it to him. This is for you, she said, to thank you, and to mark our friendship. Belle stared at it in disbelief. It was no ordinary ring. Later, Belle returned to the mansion. Galleon was there, waiting. He'd already heard about what happened. I'm proud of you, Galleon said. You protected the princess well. Belle nodded, and confirmed the mission was complete. Galleon's eyes dropped to Belle's hand. Is that? Belle looked down. Oh, the ring? Ricky gave it to me. Galleon was visibly shocked. That was the Ring of Solomon, a royal treasure with powerful mana. The fact that Ricky had entrusted it to Belle showed how deeply she respected him. Galleon couldn't believe it. Belle was even more incredible than he thought. Then Galleon said something that truly stunned Belle. It's time for you to enroll at Athena. Belle blinked. Athena, the elite paladin academy. It was open only to members of prestigious families, and most of the children from the Corey household were homeschooled by top tutors. But traditionally, heirs to the family title would go to Athena to learn about society, politics, and leadership. Belle realized what this meant. He was being groomed as the next heir. He looked at Galleon and nodded. I'll follow your wishes. Galleon told him to keep training, and that he be informed when the time came. Belle stood and asked for one thing in return. Later, Belle led Sarah into a room in the main building. Her eyes lit up. This is my new room, she asked. Belle nodded. Their father had approved it. Moving her into the main house wasn't just for comfort. It was a clear sign of rising status. Sarah jumped on the bed and giggled happily. Then she noticed a cut on Belle's hand and asked what happened. Belle said it was from his first real job. Sarah held his hand gently and told the pain to go away. Like a little kid, Belle smiled and told her it really did feel better now. He hoped this move meant Sarah would finally be treated properly, but deep down he couldn't let his guard down. 5 years from now, her life could still be in danger. He needed to prepare, to protect her from everything that was coming. That meant tracking down that boy, and the only way to do that was to become the heir for real. In a quiet room, Jin sat alone, drawing something with a cold, focused look. Razor entered and kneeled respectfully. I'm sorry, but I have to say this, Razor said. It seems Belle will be joining Athena. He was the first to be registered since your enrollment. That meant Belle was officially a candidate for the next head of the family. Razor suggested eliminating him before he got too far. Jin didn't flinch. There's no need, he replied. Belle isn't a threat. Not yet. He explained that he enjoyed challenges more when they were difficult. Watching Belle grow stronger would only make beating him later more satisfying. Razor nodded, but inside, he disagreed. He knew Jin liked to act superior, but letting Belle grow unchecked was risky. Belle already had several divine armaments, and had taken down a B-rank paladin at such a young age. If they were going to stop him, now was the time. Later, Belle trained by himself, working hard on his sword skills. He knew the one thing he still lacked was a unique ability, the kind only B-rank or higher paladins had. He shouted aloud, frustrated, wondering if he could master one before getting into Athena. To do that, he needed to slay lots of monsters and get much stronger, fast. That's when he caught a glimpse of someone approaching in his sword's reflection. It was Razor. Razor greeted him and apologized for drawing his weapon back at the mansion, saying it had been Jin's order. Still, he admitted it had been disrespectful. Belle studied him for a moment and thought Razor might not be a bad person after all. He told Razor to forget about it. He wasn't holding a grudge. Razor smiled and said he appreciated Belle's kindness. Then he brought up something else. He invited Belle to join him on a monster subjugation mission. He explained that Jin and the other paladins had different assignments, and Razor had noticed Belle's recent accomplishments. He thought Belle would be a great help. Belle was a little suspicious. Why would Jin's attendant come to him for help? But, as the son of a duke, Belle couldn't refuse. Besides, he needed more experience, and this could be a great opportunity. So he accepted. Razor bowed and thanked him, though in his mind he thought, "You're such an idiot, Belle." Razor had no intention of completing the mission together. He planned to kill Belle and make it look like an accident. After all, Belle was still just a C-rank adventurer. That night, Belle looked out his window, wondering if Razor had already gone to bed. He summoned his shield and used a wind spell to fly on it like a glider. He had his own mission in mind. He thought about ambrosia, a rare item that permanently boosted mana. In his past life, he and his master had searched everywhere for it, but never found it. There was only one way to get it: hidden dungeons. And Belle believed he'd finally found one. He arrived at a cave and stepped inside, discovering 3 gates, each marked with a color. These gates indicated the dungeon's difficulty. The green gate meant B rank. Clearing it would reward him with an ambrosia suitable for that level. But it wouldn't be easy. Belle remembered from his past life. He wasn't even allowed to try this dungeon back then. He wasn't ready. But now, he had to take the risk. There was no turning back. Inside, he encountered a ghostly knight wielding a sword and shield. He fired bullets, but they were dodged easily. Physical attacks? Useless. Even magic struggled to land. Belle realized this thing was on par with a C rank, and with his current level, that made it a serious challenge. Then he noticed something. The knight's shield was absorbing most of the damage. Maybe a powerful, mana-charged fire attack could work. He pulled out Ragnarok, channeled all his mana into a fire bullet, and waited. As the ghost knight lunged at him, Belle fired. Boom. The knight's armor melted. The shot worked. Without Ragnarok's fire attribute, Belle might have lost right there. As he moved forward, he found a mythic drink that restored both stamina and mana. Thankfully, he needed it. He continued slaying monsters, swapping between divine armaments based on their weaknesses. Eventually, he reached a large gate. The boss was beyond it. He wondered, would it be a snake? A demon? Inside, flames lit up the room. A huge monster emerged. Belle locked eyes with it. "So, you're the boss," he said. The monster didn't reply. It just attacked. Belle dodged quickly. If any of those hits landed, it would be over. He tried countering with his sword, but its armor was tough. His bullets were no better. The thing had magic resistance too. The boss slammed its sword down, and Belle blocked with his shield, but still got thrown back. The creature went silent for a moment, then lunged. Belle barely avoided it. His mana was running dangerously low. Smoke surrounded him, and from it the boss threw a sword. Belle blocked, but it was a fake-out. The real attack came from behind, a massive punch that slammed Belle to the floor. He rolled away just in time to dodge a kick. That mythic drink he found earlier, he was really glad he drank it. It was the only thing keeping him going. The boss retrieved its sword again. Belle knew he had one shot left. He summoned Achilles, the heaviest of his divine arms. Using wind magic, he hurled the shield like a boomerang. The boss dodged it easily and charged, ready to counterattack. But that was the plan. The shield rebounded and struck the boss from behind. Belle didn't waste a second. He lunged with his hammer, smashing it with everything he had. The boss stumbled. Belle smirked. Risky, but worth it. Then something unexpected happened. The boss stood up and began taking off its armor. Belle blinked. Wait, what? The real battle was just beginning. Without its armor, the boss was even faster and more vicious. It dashed forward, and Belle tried to block with his sword, but it wasn't enough. He was knocked back, slamming into the wall. He couldn't believe it. The thing was moving like it was weightless now, and with his mana almost gone, Belle didn't have many options left. If you enjoyed the story so far, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to You May Recap, and stay tuned for the next video.